Rain drummed against the panoramic windows of the penthouse on the 60th floor, creating intricate patterns of light on the marble floor. Jina stood by the window, watching the lights of Seoul flicker in the darkness of the autumn night. Her reflection in the glass seemed ghostly, an elegant figure in an emerald silk dress, long hair flowing freely over her shoulders. But her gaze was empty, as if her soul had long since left this beautiful body. "Jina, are you daydreaming again?" Her husband's cold voice made her turn around. Park Miho entered the living room, adjusting the cufflinks on his expensive suit. At 32, he looked impeccable, tall, with regular features and the penetrating gaze of a successful businessman. But there was never any warmth in his eyes, especially when he looked at her. "Just admiring the view," Jina replied quietly, not moving from her spot. "Tomorrow evening we have dinner with investors. Wear something conservative. The dark blue Chanel suit will do. And don't forget the pearl necklace, the one your father gave you for the wedding." Jina nodded, continuing to look out the window. 3 years ago, when her father, owner of a large textile company, was on the verge of bankruptcy, Miho proposed marriage. A deal that would save the family business and ensure her a comfortable future. She agreed because she loved her father and couldn't let him lose the work of his lifetime. "I said, tomorrow dinner," Miho repeated, approaching closer. "Are you listening to me?" "I'm listening." Jina turned to face him. Dark blue suit, pearls. "I'll be the perfect wife, as always." A barely noticeable bitterness sounded in her voice, but Miho paid no attention to it. He was used to her compliance. "Excellent. Go to bed early, tomorrow will be a long day. I'll work in the study for a while longer." He headed toward the exit but stopped at the door. "By the way, your mother called. Something about a memorial service for your university friend. I told her you wouldn't go. We have too much to do." Jina turned sharply, but Miho had already disappeared behind the study door. Kim Tae-hyun. Even 5 years after his death, just mentioning that name made her soul clench with pain. They met in their first year at Seoul National University. Tae-hyun studied international relations, she studied art. He wasn't like other students from wealthy families. He wore simple clothes, worked part-time at a cafe to pay for his dormitory. But there was a special magic in him that attracted people. When he laughed, the whole world became brighter. When he spoke about his dreams, to travel, help people, change the world for the better, his eyes burned with such fire that you wanted to believe in the impossible. They fell in love swiftly and recklessly. They spent days in the university library, evenings walking along the banks of the Han River, and nights talking about the future under the stars. Tae-hyun dreamed of becoming a diplomat, and she wanted to open a contemporary art gallery. They planned a trip to Europe after graduation, wanted to get married and raise children who would be free and happy. But fate decided otherwise. 2 weeks before graduation, on a rainy May morning, Tae-hyun was riding his motorcycle to his final exam. A truck didn't notice him at the intersection. The impact was so strong that the motorcycle shattered into pieces, and Tae-hyun was taken to the hospital unconscious. Doctors fought for his life for 3 days, but the injuries proved too serious. Jina spent all 3 days at his bedside, holding his cold hand, praying to all the gods she believed and didn't believe in. But when the monitors showed a flat line, her world collapsed completely. After the funeral, she withdrew into herself. She couldn't eat, sleep, or talk. Her parents took her out of university and sent her to a private clinic for treatment. It took almost a year for her to return to some semblance of normal life. But part of her soul remained forever buried with Tae-hyun. When her father found himself on the verge of ruin and Miho proposed marriage, she agreed without hesitation. What difference did it make whom she married if the only man she could love was dead? Jina went to the bedroom and mechanically began preparing for bed. She took off her dress, removed her makeup, put on silk pajamas. She lay in bed and stared at the ceiling for a long time, listening to the rain tapping on the windows. Somewhere around midnight, she finally fell asleep, but her sleep was restless, full of fragmentary memories of her student years. Taehyun was laughing, hugging her, whispering words of love in her ear. Then the picture suddenly changed, a hospital room, monitors, the smell of medicine and flowers. Suddenly she was awakened by a strange sound. As if someone was carefully opening the balcony door. Jina opened her eyes and listened. The house was in absolute silence. Miho always worked until 3 in the morning and slept in a separate room. She glanced at the clock on the nightstand, 2:30 in the morning. The sound repeated, and now she was sure someone had broken into the apartment through the balcony. Her heart began beating faster. Jina carefully got up from bed and approached the bedroom door. The corridor was immersed in semi-darkness, lit only by the night lights of the city through large windows. She listened again and heard quiet footsteps in the living room. A thief? But how could he get to the 60th floor? Jina wanted to scream, call security, but her voice stuck in her throat when a tall male figure emerged from the darkness of the living room. Even in the semi-darkness, she recognized this gait, these broad shoulders, this silhouette that she had seen in her dreams every night for the past 5 years. "No," she whispered, pressing her back against the wall. "This is impossible." But the man walked straight toward her, and when the moonlight fell on his face, Jina realized she was going insane. Standing before her was Kim Taehyun, alive, real, with the same dark eyes and soft lips that she had kissed 1,000 times. "Hello, Jina," his voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken for a very long time. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think. This was a dream, a hallucination, the delirium of a sick mind, anything but reality. Taehyun came even closer, and now she could see every detail of his face. He looked older than 5 years ago, more masculine, with small scars on the left side of his face, but it was definitely him. "You died," Jina exhaled. "I was at your funeral. I saw your body." "I know what you're thinking." Taehyun carefully extended his hand, as if afraid to frighten her. "But I'm alive. And I need to tell you something." Jina instinctively recoiled, but her back hit the wall. Taehyun took another step, and now they stood so close that she could feel the scent of his skin, the same one she remembered by heart. "Don't come near me," she whispered. "You're not real. You don't exist." But he raised his hands and placed his palms on the wall on either side of her head, trapping her between himself and the wall. His breath was warm and real, his eyes looked straight into her soul. "Jina, listen to me," his voice became harder. "I'm alive. I'm here. And I need to know." He fell silent, struggling with emotions that could be read in his gaze. Pain, love, despair, everything mixed in the dark depths of his eyes. "Do you want to live your whole life like this?" he finally said, and his voice contained so much bitterness that Jina felt a pang in her chest. "Or, do you like it when I look at you as something more than just your husband's trophy?" His words hit her like a slap. She looked at his face and saw the same Taehyun she had loved, passionate, sincere, ready to fight for what he believed in. But how was this possible? "Taehyun." Her voice was barely audible. "How did you? Why did you?" Long story. He stepped back but didn't release her gaze. "I have an hour, maybe 2, before your husband wakes up. We need to talk." Jina felt her legs giving way. Too many emotions, too much impossible was happening in these few minutes. Taehyun instantly caught her by the arms, preventing her from falling. "Hey, it's okay." He carefully embraced her, and she felt how her body remembered his touch. "Breathe. Just breathe." She inhaled his scent and realized she could no longer pretend this was a dream. Taehyun was here, alive and real. But the questions only multiplied. "Come on," he took her hand. "We need to talk, and it's not safe here." He led her to the living room, where he turned on only one small lamp in the corner. The dim light created an atmosphere of unreality, as if they were in a parallel world. Jina sat on the sofa, not taking her eyes off him. Taehyun remained standing, nervously running his hand through his hair, a habit she remembered. "Let's start with the main thing," he said. "I didn't die. That is, technically I died, but they saved me. The head injury was so serious that I lost my memory. Completely. I didn't remember my name, my past, or you." Jina remained silent, trying to comprehend his words. "They treated me in a private clinic outside the city. The doctor said that memory might return, or it might not. They gave me new documents, a new name. I became Park Juno. For the past 5 years, I've worked at a construction company, lived the ordinary life of an ordinary person. But why? Why did everyone think you were dead?" Taehyun clenched his fists, and hatred flashed in his gaze. "Because that's what your husband needed. Park Miho knew about my survival from the very beginning. He bribed the doctors, forced them to hide the truth. And he told everyone else that I died from my injuries." Jina felt the world collapsing around her again. Why? Why did he need this? Don't you understand? Taehyun sat next to her on the sofa, and she saw pain in his eyes. "He was in love with you back in university. He watched us, envied us, planned. And when the accident happened, he saw his chance. Get me out of the way and marry you. But father, he had financial problems, which Miho created." Taehyun's voice became hard. "He bought up your father's debts, put him in a hopeless situation, and then magnanimously offered a solution, marriage to you." Jina covered her face with her hands. Everything she had believed in for the past 5 years turned out to be a lie. Her grief, her sacrifice, her consent to a loveless marriage, all of it was part of someone else's plan. "How did you learn the truth?" she asked without raising her head. "My memory returned a month ago. First in fragments, your face, your laughter, our plans. Then everything else. I started digging and learned about the wedding, about how Miho was hiding my survival. I realized he had stolen 5 years of our lives." Taehyun carefully removed her hands from her face, forcing her to look at him. "Jina, I didn't come for revenge. I came for you. We can start everything over." The same passion burned in his eyes as 5 years ago. But now something more mature was mixed with it, understanding the price of losses and readiness to fight for happiness. "It's impossible," she whispered. "I'm married. I have obligations." "To whom?" "To the person who stole your life? Destroyed your father and forced you to become his trophy wife? You don't understand. If I leave, Miho will ruin my family. He can do it. And if you stay, then what?" Taehyun stood up and began pacing the room. "Will you play the role of the perfect wife for the rest of your life for a man you don't love? Bear children to a man who stole your happiness?" His words were cruel but fair. Jina knew he was right, but fear of the consequences was stronger. "I need time," she said. "This is too sudden, too much." Taehyun stopped and looked at her with understanding. "All right. But no, I won't disappear again. I'll fight for us, even if you're not ready yet." He approached her and leaned down to kiss her forehead. The touch of his lips was so familiar that it took her breath away. "I'll find a way to free you from this marriage," he whispered. "And then we'll go on that trip to Europe we dreamed about." He headed toward the balcony door, but she called out to him, "Taehyun, how can I contact you?" He turned around and smiled, that same smile that once lit up her world. "Don't worry. I'll find you." And he disappeared into the night, leaving her alone with soul-turning thoughts and revived hope. The next morning began as usual. Jina woke up at 7 o'clock to the sound of the alarm, took a shower, dressed in a strict suit, and went down to breakfast. Miho was already sitting at the table, reading the morning news and sipping coffee. "Good morning," she said, taking her place. "Morning." He didn't lift his head from the newspaper. "Remember about dinner tonight? 7 o'clock, Signal Restaurant. I already booked a table. Of course I remember. The maid served her usual breakfast, avocado toast, fresh fruit, green tea. But today the food seemed tasteless, like cardboard. Her thoughts returned to the night meeting, to Taehyun's words, to his touch. Was it a dream? A hallucination of an exhausted mind? But then where did the light mark on her wrist come from his fingers when he supported her, preventing her from falling? By the way, Miho finally looked up from reading. A team of designers is coming to us this afternoon. I want to redo the study. Be home and make sure they don't interfere with my work. All right. She nodded mechanically, but something inside protested against his commanding tone. Before, she hadn't paid attention to this. She was used to being an obedient, convenient wife. But Taehyun's words had changed something in her perception. Trophy wife, that's what he said. And it was the truth. Miho never asked her opinion, never interested himself in her desires. She was a beautiful doll in his perfect house, part of his image as a successful businessman. I'm going. Miho got up from the table, adjusting his tie. I'll be back by 6 to change for dinner. He leaned down and pecked her on the cheek, a dutiful husband's kiss. But today this touch seemed disgusting to her. Left alone, Jina went to the living room and looked at the balcony door. There were no signs of break-in. The door was locked, the alarm hadn't gone off. Maybe it was a dream? But then she noticed something strange. On the coffee table lay a small white flower, jasmine. The same variety that Taehyun used to give her at university, saying she smelled like jasmine after rain. Her hands trembled when she picked up the flower. It was fresh, real. So the night meeting was real too. Taehyun was alive. Taehyun was here. And he wanted to take her with him. Jina pressed the flower to her lips and felt a fire ignite in her chest that she thought was forever extinguished. For 5 years she had been dead inside, existing as a shadow of herself. But one meeting with Taehyun brought her back to life. She went up to the second floor, to her room, and locked the door. She approached the large mirror and looked at herself. Pale face, dull eyes, thin lips pressed into a straight line, this is what remained of the once lively and passionate girl who dreamed of conquering the world. But today a spark flickered in her eyes. Barely noticeable, but real. The day dragged on painfully long. Jina tried to read, watch television, do yoga, all to no avail. Her thoughts constantly returned to Taehyun. Where was he now? What was he doing? How was he planning to free her from marriage? The design team arrived at 2 in the afternoon. Young creative people, full of enthusiasm and ideas. They showed sketches of the new study, discussed color solutions, argued about what furniture would better emphasize the owner's status. What does the lady of the house think? Asked the head designer, an elegant woman of about 40. Do you like the concept? Jina looked at the sketches, dark wood, leather furniture, strict lines. A typical masculine study of a successful businessman. Very. Solid, she said diplomatically. But? The woman smiled. I hear a but in your voice. It's somehow gloomy. As if all life has left it. The designer looked at her attentively. How would you like to see it? Jina thought. Before, she had never asked herself this question. Her husband's opinion was the only thing that mattered. Brighter, she said finally. With large windows, living plants. So that it would be pleasant to work and think about good things in it. Interesting idea, the designer made a note in her notebook. But your husband specifically asked for dark tones. Then do as my husband asked. The spark in Jina's eyes went out. She became again the obedient wife who had no right to her own opinion. The designers finished work by 5 in the evening and left. Jina remained alone in the big house that resembled an expensive hotel more than a family nest. No personal belongings, no memories, no traces of real life. At 6 in the evening, Miho returned. He went straight to the bedroom to change, throwing over his shoulder, "Get ready. We're leaving in half an hour." Jina put on the dark blue suit as he asked, and the pearl necklace from her father. She looked at herself in the mirror, the perfect wife of a rich man. Beautiful, well-groomed, silent. But the small jasmine hidden in her jacket pocket reminded her that somewhere in this city there was a person who saw much more in her than just a beautiful doll. The Signal restaurant was located on the top floor of one of Seoul's most expensive hotels. Panoramic windows opened a view of the entire city, and the interior was designed in the style of modern luxury: marble, gold, crystal. Miho and Jina arrived first. They were met by the restaurant manager and escorted to a pre-booked table in the corner of the hall. Miho ordered expensive wine and began looking through a presentation on his phone. "Remember," he said without lifting his head, "today we need to make a good impression. These people can invest $50 million in the project." "I understand. Smile, but not too much. Answer questions, but briefly. And don't forget to praise my company." Jina nodded, feeling like an actress preparing for a performance. The role of the perfect wife that she had been playing for 3 years. The investors arrived 15 minutes late. 3 middle-aged men in expensive suits, exuding an aura of big money and power. Miho stood up to meet them with a broad smile. "Gentlemen, welcome. Allow me to introduce my wife, Jina." She stood up and politely bowed. The men looked at her appraisingly. A beautiful wife was part of a successful businessman's image. "Charming," said the eldest of them, Mr. Park. "You're lucky, Miho." "Very much so." Miho put his hand on her shoulder with a possessive gesture. "Jina adorns any event." They ordered food and began discussing the details of the investment project. Jina sat silently, occasionally smiling and nodding at appropriate moments. Her opinion interested no one. She was here for beauty, like an expensive vase or painting. "The construction market in Korea is experiencing a boom," Miho was saying, demonstrating charts on his tablet. "Our company has already implemented 3 major projects in Gangnam, and all of them paid off handsomely." "Impressive," nodded Mr. Choi, the second investor. "What about competition?" "We use innovative technologies and have exclusive contracts with suppliers. This gives us an advantage over competitors." Jina listened to their conversation half-heartedly, mentally returning to her night meeting with Taehyun. She wondered what he was doing now. Was he thinking about her the way she was thinking about him? "What does your charming wife think?" The third investor, Mr. Lim, suddenly addressed her. Surely such a beautiful woman has her own opinion about her husband's business. All eyes turned to her. Miho tensed slightly. He didn't like it when attention switched to Jina. I completely support my husband's decisions," she answered with a standard phrase. "He's a very smart person. Modesty adorns a woman." Mr. Park smiled. "These days it's rare to meet a wife who doesn't interfere in her husband's affairs." "Jina understands her role," Miho said coldly. "She creates ideal conditions for my work." A warning sounded in his tone. "Don't stick out, be quiet and smile." Before, she meekly accepted such treatment, but today something inside her rebelled. "Although," she added, surprising herself, "sometimes it seems to me that construction lacks attention to ecology. It would be wonderful if new buildings considered the needs of the environment more." Miho shot her a warning look, but the investors became interested. "Interesting thought," said Mr. Choi. "Ecological construction is the trend of the future. In Europe, they're already actively using green technologies." "Exactly." Jina felt long-forgotten enthusiasm awakening inside her. Solar panels, rainwater recycling systems, vertical gardens. It's not only beautiful but also economically beneficial in the long term. Mr. Lim nodded approvingly. "Your wife is right, Miho. Maybe it's worth thinking about an ecological direction." Miho smiled tensely, but Jina could see how his jaw clenched. Of course, we're always open to new ideas. Although Jina understands art better than construction. A subtle hint that she should better keep quiet. But Mr. Park wouldn't let up. Art is wonderful. Tell us, what do you like? I studied art history, said Jina, feeling interest in the conversation flare up. I dreamed of opening a contemporary art gallery. I wanted to support young artists who are looking for new forms of self-expression. She suddenly stopped short, realizing she was talking about dreams she had long buried. Miho looked at her with barely concealed irritation. That was long ago, she quickly added. Now I'm completely focused on family. A pity, Mr. Lim shook his head. It would be interesting to see a gallery with such an inspired owner. The rest of the dinner passed discussing financial details. Jina fell silent again, but her thoughts were far away. The conversation about the gallery awakened memories of her student years, of plans with Taehyun, of a life full of dreams and hopes. When the investors finally left, promising to give an answer within a week, Miho paid the bill and approached Jina. The expression on his face didn't bode well. Let's go home, he said in an icy tone. On the way home in the car, he was silent, but Jina felt the tension emanating from him. At home, he went straight to his study and poured himself whiskey. What was that? He asked without turning around. What do you mean? Don't pretend to be stupid. Your comments about ecology, stories about the gallery. Did you decide to show the investors how smart you are? They asked for my opinion themselves. And you should have said something neutral, not meddle in affairs you don't understand. Miho turned sharply, and she saw cold fury in his eyes. Your role is to be beautiful and silent. Don't forget that. What if I don't want to just be silent? The words escaped before she could stop them. Miho froze, not believing his ears. What did you say? I said. Jina felt her pulse quickening. What if I don't want to be a silent doll my whole life? I have my own thoughts, opinions, dreams. Dreams? Miho laughed, but his laughter was cold. Your dreams were shattered along with your boyfriend at that intersection. Now you have a duty to your family and to me. The mention of Taehyun cut painfully through her heart, but now Jina knew the truth. What do you know about what happened then? Enough, Miho took a large gulp of whiskey. I know you fell in love with a poor idealist who filled your head with stupid dreams. It's good that it all ended. Good that he died? Gina's voice trembled with indignation. Good that you understood your place. Next to me, in the house I built for you, with the money I give you. He approached closer, and she smelled alcohol. Don't forget, Jina, who your family's well-being depends on. One word from me, and your father's company will go bankrupt in a week. The threat sounded calm, matter-of-fact, which made it even more terrible. Jina realized she had gone too far. I didn't mean to. Didn't mean to what? Show the investors that my wife doesn't respect me? Or let them understand that there's disorder in my house? Miho put his glass on the table and grabbed her chin, forcing her to look into his eyes. Remember once and for all, you are my wife. My property. And you will do what I say, when I say it. Understood? Jina nodded, but inside everything was boiling with humiliation and rage. How could she have endured such treatment for 3 years? Go to bed, Miho ordered. And next time, think before you open your mouth. She went up to the bedroom on trembling legs. She locked the door and collapsed on the bed. Her body shook with suppressed emotions, anger, shame, despair. She took the dried jasmine from her pocket and pressed it to her lips. Where was Taehyun? Why didn't he appear when he was so needed? The next few days passed in tense silence. Miho behaved pointedly coldly, reminding her who was the master of the house. Jina tried not to cross his path, spending time in the library or on the terrace. She was waiting. She didn't know for what exactly, but she felt that life would take a sharp turn. Taehyun had promised to find a way to free her, and she believed him. She had to believe, otherwise she would collapse completely. On Thursday morning, when Miho had left for the office, Jina received a message from an unknown number: "Meet me at Dreams Cafe in Insadong at 2 p.m. Come alone. T." Her heart began beating faster. Taehyun wanted to see her in broad daylight, in a crowded place. So he had a plan. She remembered Dreams Cafe. They often went there during their student years. A small cozy place with a view of the street, where they served the best coffee in the area and played quiet jazz music. She dressed in simple jeans and a sweater, put on dark glasses, and left the house, telling the maid she was going shopping. She got to Insadong by taxi, asking the driver to drop her off a few blocks from the cafe. Taehyun was already waiting for her in the far corner of the hall, his back to the entrance. He wore a simple black jacket and jeans, the clothes of an ordinary worker, which he had been for the past 5 years. Seeing her, he stood up and barely noticeably nodded. "Hello," she said, sitting across from him. "Hello. Thank you for coming." He looked tired, as if he hadn't slept for several nights. There was a fresh bruise on his left cheek that he was trying to hide. "What happened to your face?" "Nothing serious. I was finding out some things about your husband." Taehyun ordered cappuccino for her, her favorite drink in her student years. "Some things don't change. Jina, I need to tell you something. What I learned about Miho. It's worse than I thought." She prepared for the worst. "He didn't just hide the fact of my survival. He organized the accident." The world around Jina spun. She grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling. "What? What are you saying?" "I have proof. Miho bribed the truck driver. He was supposed to hit me at the intersection so it would look like an accident." Taehyun took a voice recorder from his pocket and placed it on the table. "I recorded a conversation with that driver. His conscience had been tormenting him for 5 years, and he finally told the truth." He turned on the recording. A man's voice, distorted by alcohol and tears. "He gave me 50 million won. Said the guy was sleeping with his girlfriend. I thought, just scare him, break a leg or arm. But the impact was stronger. I thought I killed him. God, how many years I've lived with this." Jina listened to the recording in horror. Her husband hadn't just hidden Taehyun's survival, he had tried to kill him. "Why are you telling me this?" she whispered. "Because now we have a chance. This is attempted murder. Miho could get life imprisonment. But if you go to the police, then everything will become known. Your marriage will be declared invalid, and you'll be free." Taehyun covered her hand with his palm. "I understand, it's scary. But we can't live in lies anymore." Jina looked at their joined hands. Taehyun's touch was warm and reliable, so familiar. But fear of the unknown was stronger. What if something goes wrong? What if Miho has connections in the police? That's why I don't want to act alone. I need your help." "What help?" Taehyun leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Next week your family has the traditional autumn festival, right? Your father always hosts a big reception." "Yes, on Saturday." "But what does this have to do with?" "Miho will be there, surrounded by guests, journalists. The perfect place for a public exposure." Jina understood what he was getting at. "You want me to help you break into the reception?" "Not break in. I'll come as an invited guest. I have connections in the journalistic community, people who are interested in loud exposés." He took out a second phone and showed her photos of documents. "These are bank transfers to the truck driver's account. They came from Miho's personal account. And these are records of his phone conversations with accomplices. I have everything needed for prosecution." "Where did you get all this?" "I worked at a construction company for 5 years. I learned some things about how to obtain information. And I have friends who help. Taehyun leaned back in his chair. Jina, I understand I'm asking a lot. But this is our only chance for justice. And for a future together. She looked into his eyes and saw the same determination as in their student years when he talked about his plans to change the world. Then she believed in him unconditionally. But now fear constrained her. I need time to think. Of course. But remember, every day you spend with him is a day of stolen life. Taehyun stood up, leaving money for coffee on the table. If you agree to help, send me a message. If not, I'll understand. He leaned down and kissed her on the top of her head, as tenderly as in the old days. Whatever you decide, know this, I love you. I've always loved you and will love you, even if we never see each other again. And he left, leaving her alone with the most difficult decision of her life. Jina sat in the cafe for another half hour, thinking over Taehyun's words. Attempted murder. Bribery of witnesses. Stolen years of life. All of this seemed like a nightmare, but the evidence was too convincing. On the way home, she thought about how little she knew the man she had lived with for 3 years. Miho had always seemed cold and calculating to her, but she hadn't suspected he was capable of murder. At home, an unpleasant surprise awaited her. Miho had returned earlier than usual and was sitting in the living room with a grim face. Where were you? He asked without getting up from the sofa. I was shopping, she lied, trying to speak in an even voice. You're lying. He took out his phone and showed her a photo taken by a surveillance camera. Jina was leaving the cafe in Insadong. I asked security to follow you. After your behavior at dinner with the investors, I no longer trust you. Jina's heart was beating wildly, but she tried to remain calm. I was just drinking coffee. I wanted to be alone. Who were you meeting with? No one. I was alone. Miho got up and approached her. Dangerous determination could be read in his eyes. Don't lie to me, Jina. Security saw you talking with a man. Who is he? I don't know what you're talking about. The blow was sudden and painful. Miho struck her with his palm across the cheek, and she flew back against the wall. I said, don't lie. Jina covered her burning cheek with her hand and looked at her husband. The mask of a civilized businessman had fallen off, revealing the cruel face of a tyrant. I'm asking for the last time, who is this man? Nobody, she whispered. Just a casual acquaintance. Miho grabbed her by the hair and jerked, forcing her to look into his eyes. If I find out you're lying to me, you'll regret it. And your family will regret it too. He pushed her so hard that she fell onto the sofa. Go to your room. And don't come out until tomorrow. Jina got up on trembling legs and headed for the stairs. Tears were in her eyes, not from pain, but from humiliation and rage. In her room, she locked herself in and approached the mirror. A red spot was spreading on her cheek. Tomorrow there would be a bruise. She touched the sore spot with her fingers and felt something finally break inside her. For 3 years she had endured coldness and neglect. She had put up with her opinion meaning nothing. She had accepted the role of a beautiful doll in the house of a man she didn't love. But physical violence was the last straw. She took out her phone and typed a message to Taehyun, I agree to help. But first tell me the whole plan. The answer came in a few minutes, tomorrow at the same cafe, at the same time. Be careful. Jina lay down on the bed, pressing a cold compress to her cheek. Outside, rain was beginning, fine, persistent, like tears from the sky. But for the first time in many years, hope was born in her soul. Tomorrow she would learn Taehyun's plan. And on Saturday, at the family celebration, everything would change forever. The next day Jina barely managed to hide the bruise on her cheek with thick foundation. Miho left for the office early in the morning, throwing as he left, I hope yesterday's lesson did you some good. She remained silent, but rage was seething inside. Every hour spent in this house was becoming torture. At the cafe, she arrived 10 minutes before the appointed time. Taehyun was already waiting, having chosen a table even farther from the windows and entrance. Seeing her face, he darkened. He hit you? It doesn't matter. It matters very much. Taehyun clenched his fists. I'll kill him with my own hands. Taehyun, calm down. Jina covered his hand with hers. Better tell me about the plan. He took several deep breaths, trying to pull himself together. All right. Listen carefully. Taehyun took out a tablet and showed her a diagram of her parents' house. The celebration starts at 7 in the evening. By 8 o'clock all the guests will be in the main hall. Traditionally, your father gives a welcoming speech at 8:30. Yes, that's all correct. Right after your father's speech, I'll take the stage under the guise of a journalist and present evidence of Miho's crimes. I'll have a microphone, cameras, witnesses. He won't be able to cover it all up. Jina nodded, but one question worried her. How will you get into the house? Security checks all guests. This is where I need your help. Taehyun pointed to the back entrance on the diagram. This door is only used by service staff. You'll need to open it for me at 7:30. But I'll be in the main hall, receiving guests with my parents. You'll find an excuse to step away. Say you need to check the kitchen or something like that. Jina imagined this scene and felt her legs giving way. What will happen afterward? When you tell everything? Then the police will arrive. I've already arranged with Detective Park from the Economic Crimes Department. Miho will be arrested right at the celebration. And me? What will happen to me? Taehyun took her hands in his. You'll be free. A marriage concluded under coercion and based on lies will be declared invalid. And we'll finally be able to be together. It sounded so simple, but Jina understood that everything could go wrong. What if something happens? What if Miho suspects? Then we'll just disappear. I have documents prepared for new identities and tickets to Europe. Remember, we dreamed of traveling? Such sincere hope shone in his eyes that her heart clenched. But fear was stronger than romantic dreams. Taehyun, what if I can't? What if I get scared and don't open the door? He looked at her for a long time, then carefully touched her cheek, the place where the bruise was. Jina, look at yourself. You're living with a man who beats you. Who stole 5 years of our lives. Who would have killed me if he could? His voice became softer. I'm not forcing you to do anything. If you want to stay with him, I'll understand. But then it will be your conscious choice. Jina closed her eyes, imagining 2 different lives. In one, the safety of a golden cage, submission, humiliation, but stability. In the other, uncertainty, risk, but the possibility of real happiness. All right, she said, opening her eyes. I'll do it. Taehyun smiled, that same smile that once lit up her world. Then see you on Saturday. He stood up, but she held his hand. Taehyun. What if this is our last meeting? What if everything goes wrong? He leaned down and kissed her, tenderly, carefully, as if she were made of crystal. Then at least I'll know that you forgave me, he whispered. And that our love was real. Saturday turned out sunny, which was rare for autumn. Jina's parents' house in the prestigious Gangnam district was preparing for the traditional family celebration, an event that brought together all relatives, family friends, and her father's business partners. Jina arrived at her parents' house at 5 in the evening to help with the final preparations. Her mother met her with the usual lamentations. Oh, daughter, you've lost so much weight. Doesn't this Miho feed you at all? Mom, I'm fine. Jina hugged her mother, feeling the familiar scent of her perfume. Where's your husband? Why didn't he come to help? He has an important meeting. He'll come for the beginning of the celebration. Her father came out of his study, hearing her voice. Lee Jong-soo looked tired. Recent years had taken a heavy toll on his health. Jina, dear, he hugged his daughter tightly. How are things? Everything's fine, Dad. She looked at her father and thought that in a few hours his world would turn upside down. He would learn that his son-in-law, whom he respected, was a murderer and fraudster. That his daughter's marriage was built on lies and coercion. Dad, do you remember Kim Tae-hyun? My friend from university? Her father's face darkened. Of course I remember. He was a good guy. It's a pity he left so early. Do you think? If he hadn't died, could we have been happy? Her father looked at her in surprise. Jina, why such questions? You can't live in the past. You have a good husband, a comfortable life. But I don't love him. The words escaped on their own. Her father and mother exchanged glances. Daughter, her mother took her hands. Love isn't the main thing in marriage. The main things are stability, respect, common goals. What if I want real love? Then you're a foolish girl, her father said sternly. Miho saved our family from ruin. You should be grateful to him. Jina realized that her parents would never understand her. For them, a marriage of convenience was the norm, a tradition followed by generations. By 7 in the evening, the house was filled with guests. Elderly relatives in traditional hanbok, her father's business partners in expensive suits, family friends with children. About 100 people in total. Miho arrived exactly at 7, punctual as always. He was impeccable in a dark gray suit, with perfect hair and a cold smile. Darling, he kissed Jina on the cheek for the public, you look beautiful. She wore a burgundy silk dress and pearl earrings, an outfit he had chosen for her the day before. Thank you. They went into the main hall, where guests had already gathered. Jina smiled, bowed, answered questions about health and future plans. She played the role of a happy wife, as she had done for 3 years. But inside everything was trembling with nervous tension. In an hour, Tae-hyun was supposed to appear. In an hour, her life would change forever. At 7:30, her father climbed onto a small stage in the corner of the hall. Dear friends and relatives, he began his traditional speech. Today we have gathered to celebrate the unity of our family and thank our ancestors for their wisdom. Jina listened to the familiar words and looked at her watch. 10 more minutes, and she would have to leave the hall under some pretext. Special gratitude I want to express to my son-in-law, Park Miho, who became a true support for our family. The guests murmured approvingly. Miho modestly nodded, accepting the praise. Jina felt nauseous. In a few more minutes, everyone would learn the truth about this man. Excuse me, she whispered to her mother, I need to check how things are in the kitchen. Now? But Dad hasn't finished his speech yet. I'll be quick. Jina quietly left the hall and headed for the back entrance. The corridor was empty, all the guests had gathered to listen to her father. The door was locked with 2 locks. She opened them with trembling hands and looked outside. Tae-hyun stood in the shadow of trees, dressed in a dark journalist suit. Ready? He whispered. I don't know, she answered honestly. He entered the house and carefully closed the door behind him. Jina, if you've changed your mind, say so now. I'll leave and never bother you again. She looked at him, the man she loved more than life, whom she had thought dead for 5 years. The man who was risking everything for their happiness. No, she said firmly. I haven't changed my mind. Applause came from the hall. Her father had finished his speech. Then let's go. Tae-hyun took her hand. Time to restore justice. They entered the hall when the guests were still applauding her father. Tae-hyun confidently headed for the stage, while Jina remained at the entrance, ready to block the exit if necessary. Excuse me, Tae-hyun said loudly, climbing onto the stage. I'm journalist Kim Tae-hyun from Korea Times newspaper. May I say a few words? Jina's father looked at the uninvited guest in confusion. A puzzled whisper arose in the hall. "Excuse me, young man, but this is a private event. What I want to say concerns everyone present." Taehyun took the microphone. "This especially concerns Mr. Park Miho." Miho turned sharply and saw Taehyun for the first time. His face went white, as if he had seen a ghost. "Who are you?" he screamed. "Security." But the guards didn't have time to react. Taehyun was already speaking into the microphone. "My name is Kim Taehyun. 5 years ago, Mr. Park Miho organized an attempt on my life and then concealed the fact of my survival in order to marry the woman I loved." Deathly silence reigned in the hall. Everyone looked now at Taehyun, now at Miho, not understanding what was happening. "This is the ravings of a madman," Miho shouted. "Kim Taehyun died 5 years ago." "I stand before you alive," Taehyun replied calmly. "And I have evidence of your crimes." He took out a tablet and connected it to the hall sound system. "This is a recording of the confession of the truck driver who hit me on Park Miho's orders." The drunk voice of the driver came from the speakers, telling how he was paid for the accident. The guests listened in shock. "And these are bank documents confirming the transfer of 50 million won from Park Miho's personal account to the executor's account." Copies of bank transfers with clear signatures and stamps appeared on the screen. Miho tried to break through to the stage, but was stopped by guests. "This is a fake," he screamed. "This person is a fraudster." "Another interesting document," Taehyun continued imperturbably. "A medical record from the private clinic where I was treated after the accident. Here it clearly states that treatment was paid for by Park Miho on condition that information about my survival would not be disclosed." Pages of the medical record appeared on the screen. Jina saw her father carefully studying the documents, and his face becoming increasingly grim. And finally, Taehyun turned to Miho. "Explain to the guests why you needed to get me out of the way." "I won't explain anything to this madman." "Then I'll explain." Taehyun looked at the hall. Park Miho was in love with Jina back in university. But she chose me. Then he decided to eliminate his rival and get the girl, while simultaneously taking over her father's business. Now all eyes turned to Jina. She stood at the entrance, pale as a sheet, but didn't run away. "First, he organized an attempt on my life. When I survived but lost my memory, he concealed this fact and declared me dead. Then he artificially created financial problems for Mr. Lee's company, buying up his debts through shell companies. This is a lie." Miho rushed about the hall like a cornered animal. "And when Mr. Lee found himself on the verge of bankruptcy, he magnanimously offered to save the business in exchange for his daughter's hand. A perfect plan, isn't it?" Jina's father slowly approached Miho. "Is this true?" he asked quietly, but everyone heard every word. "Of course not. These are all fabrications. I'm asking for the last time, is this true?" There was such strength in the old man's voice that Miho involuntarily stepped back. "Even if it is," he began, but immediately realized he had given himself away. The hall exploded with exclamations of indignation. Someone shouted shame, someone demanded calling the police. "The police are already on their way," said Taehyun. "Detective Park from the Economic Crimes Department received all the documents an hour ago." As if on cue, several uniformed police officers entered the hall. "Mr. Park Miho," said the senior officer, "you are under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder, fraud, and concealment of a crime." Miho tried to break free, but the police quickly restrained him. "It's all her," he screamed, pointing at Jina. "She's in league with him. They deliberately set this all up." But no one was listening to him anymore. The guests parted, allowing the police to lead the arrested man away. Jina's father approached his daughter. His face was like stone. "Did you know?" "Only for the last few days," she answered honestly. "I couldn't believe it until I saw the evidence." And you didn't think it necessary to tell me? Dad, Let me go. Everyone turned at the scream. Miho had broken free from the police and rushed at Jina with a face distorted by rage. If I can't have you, then no one can. A knife glinted in his hand. Where he got it was unclear. Jina froze in horror, unable to move. But Taehyun was faster. He jumped down from the stage and threw himself between them, taking the blow. The blade entered his shoulder, and he fell to the floor. Taehyun. Jina dropped to her knees beside him. The police finally grabbed Miho, and one of the guests, who turned out to be a doctor, immediately rushed to help the wounded man. It's all right, Taehyun whispered, grabbing Jina's hand. The wound isn't deep. Idiot, she cried. Why did you risk it? Because I love you, he smiled weakly. And I'll never let anyone hurt you again. The next 3 months flew by like a fog. Miho was arrested and imprisoned. The investigation gathered irrefutable evidence of his guilt, recordings of phone conversations, bank transfers, witness testimony. Jina filed for divorce, and the marriage was declared invalid as concluded under coercion and based on false information. The family got back all the assets that Miho had appropriated through shell companies. Taehyun recovered from his wound in the hospital, where Jina came every day. They talked a lot, got to know each other again, planned the future. How are you feeling? She asked, entering the ward on another sunny day. Much better. Taehyun sat in a chair by the window, reading a book. The doctor said I'll be discharged tomorrow. Excellent. Then we can go to my parents. Dad wants to talk to you. Relations with her parents were complicated. Her father blamed himself for not seeing Miho's true face. Her mother worried about gossip and rumors in society. But gradually they began to accept their daughter's choice. What does he want to discuss? The wedding, Jina smiled. He thinks we need to officially formalize our relationship since we're planning to live together. And what do you think? Jina approached him and sat on the armrest of the chair. I think we've already lost 5 years. I don't want to lose another day. Taehyun embraced her with his healthy arm. Then let's get married. But not a lavish ceremony like last time. Something simple, sincere. In a small church outside the city? Perfect. They married in January, in a small Christian church in the mountains. Only 20 people were present, the closest relatives and friends. Jina wore a simple white dress, Taehyun a dark blue suit. No luxury, no conventions, only love and sincerity. After the ceremony, they went on their honeymoon to Europe, fulfilling the dream they had cherished back in university. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, cities they had once dreamed of together. Remember, said Taehyun, standing with her near the Eiffel Tower, we planned to come here right after graduation. I remember. You wanted to propose to me right here. Then I'll correct my mistake. He got down on one knee right there, among tourists and couples in love. Jina, will you be my wife for the rest of our lives? We're already married, silly, she laughed through tears. But I want to do this right. The way I planned 5 years ago. Yes, she said, kissing him. Yes, yes, and yes again. The trial of Miho ended in March. He received 15 years in prison for attempted murder and fraud. Jina wasn't present at the sentencing. She didn't want to see the man who had stolen the best years of her life anymore. It's all over, said Taehyun, returning from court. He can never hurt us again. Finally, Jina sighed. Now we can live peacefully. They sat in a small cafe near the house they rented in a quiet district of Seoul. Taehyun got a job at a large international company as a translator, and Jina opened a small contemporary art gallery, the very one she had dreamed of in her student years.